I am Dr. Jennifer Jackson. I'm a registered nurse and assistant professor in the Faculty of Nursing at the University of Calgary. And I am here today to talk about quantitative designs. So this is a high-level overview of different types of designs we can use in quantitative research. And what this does is it tells us the different conventions that we could expect with those designs so we can appraise them against our expected standards. So if we're talking about different kinds of shirts, we might have a button-up shirt. We might have a button-up flannel shirt. We might have a t-shirt. We might have a long sleeve shirt. And if I say that to someone who is an English speaker and in the same society as I am, and we might have the same mental model of like, okay, button-up dress shirt. In my mind, I have a picture of what that is, and it's probably fairly similar to the picture that they have in their mind. And I'll let the humanities professors talk about the, whether they are or not and how we get those pictures and all that kind of thing. But why we talk about designs is we can understand these different categories. So if I think, okay, button-up dress shirt, I expect to see buttons. I probably expect to see a collar. I probably expect to see cuffs. It's going to be at least 3 pieces of fabric plus the sleeves. And I have certain expectations that help me understand that thing. And if I see a dress shirt, it's like, oh, maybe it's got some like fancy thread woven in to give it a little va-va-voom, if you will. That might be like, oh, that's interesting. That's not what I would normally expect, but that kind of makes sense if that's your goal. However, if I see a button-up dress shirt and one sleeve is t-shirt length and the other sleeve is full length, you're like, whoa, that does not meet my expectations. Something weird is going on here. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean something bad, but when we're thinking about appraising research, we want to look and say, okay, if I expect a button-up dress shirt and I get something different, I want to look more carefully at that study to see what the researchers were doing. There might be very good reasons for why they did that, but it also might be a sign that it's not high quality research. So now we're going to go through the different designs. So generally a design, like a kind of mental model of a garment, it's a systematic plan and a systematic way of studying something. It's like, this is how this is done in this particular idea. Generally in quantitative research, we're going to control the context to isolate an effect. So what that means is we're going to take different things into account so that we can know if the thing we're measuring is actually different in different situations, or maybe it's different after our intervention. So we want to make sure it's not due to random chance and that it's related directly to whatever manipulation we put into the environment. We do that so we know if things are going to work. Like, if I give this medication to my patient, is it going to be safe? Is it going to decrease their pain? So the idea of like controlling and manipulating the environment might sound a little off-putting, but ultimately within the research context, the aim is to say, can I be sure that the medication is what made the person feel better and not just the fact that they got out for a walk or their family came to visit today? So I made a decision tree, I guess, of the different kinds of research. Here I'm trying to talk and get my annotate button going at the same time. So we have different kinds of quantitative studies. So we can start at the top generally. Is there an intervention? And when I say intervention, I mean that in the broadest possible sense. Is there something that happened that we are measuring the effect of that thing? So we could measure before and after, or we could cause the thing to happen, but did a thing happen? Or are we just describing what is organically happening out in the universe? So that is our first question. Is there an intervention? If yes, we're talking about an experiment. Because a researcher deliberately did a thing to see what the outcome would be. Or they measured around a thing. So I'll go into this in a bit more detail, but did a thing happen? Yes. Did the researcher cause the intervention? If yes, then we're looking at a more an experimental design. If they did not, we're looking at a quasi-experimental design. So for example, are we measuring outcomes of people who got COVID? Well, it's not ethical for us as researchers to give 30 people COVID and have 30 people who did not get COVID. What we can do is say, okay, we'll find 30 people that had COVID and analyze their outcomes compared to people who did not. So is there an intervention? Yes, some people got COVID, but we didn't cause that, so it falls in the quasi-experimental design. So you'll see quasi-experimental designs where it's not ethical to do an experiment. So for example, what are the outcomes of for children of pregnant mothers who smoked during pregnancy? We can't make pregnancy capable people smoke during, like, it's unethical for us to do that. But we do know that some people do smoke during pregnancy. So we can look at what are the consequences of that. So that is quasi-experimental design. If we say, okay, the researcher caused the intervention, maybe we are trying a new medication, maybe we are offering an educational in-service, maybe we're doing something along those lines. We say, is there a control group? So do we have one group of people who got the medication and one group who did not? Or are we just have one group? If we have a control group, we're looking at a randomized control trial. So we have one group that didn't and one group that did, and we compare their outcomes. If we don't have a control group, we're talking about the pre-test, post-test. So we measure, we give everybody a workshop, and then we measure again. So that is how we can, at a high level, categorize experimental designs. Why we want to do this is because we have different expectations of a randomized control trial than we do of a quasi-experimental design. So that's why it's important to kind of look through these different pieces and separate out exactly what kind of study you're talking about. On the other hand, is there an intervention? No, we're just measuring stuff out in the world. Okay, this is a descriptive study. This cannot give us cause and effect. An experimental design, we did a thing and we're measuring after, and we can determine exactly if that thing caused the outcomes. With a descriptive study, we cannot. That doesn't mean that a descriptive study is not valuable. It just means it cannot determine the cause and effect. It can measure things and tell us about a general understanding. So we can look and say, are we comparing variables? So are we looking at the relationship between resilience and quality of life? If so, we're going to continue down this path. If not, we're looking at a prevalence study. Now, prevalence studies do compare variables to the same, but not to the same degree. So a prevalence study, we see that often with communicable diseases or any type of disease condition. How much of that is present in the population? So how many people in Calgary have a sexually transmitted infection versus how many people in Las Vegas have a sexually transmitted infection? There will probably be different rates of prevalence. We can also look at, how many people in Calgary had measles, how many people in Calgary had measles 50 years ago. So we're looking at like what we would call the burden of disease within a population. So how much measles is in this specific group that we're measuring. So prevalence studies, you see a lot of this in epidemiology, infectious disease, and they're like monitoring over time how much of this thing is there. And so you can look at like, is there a difference in measles rates between men and women? So there are nuances there, but generally the point of a prevalence study is like, look at the burden of disease in a population. So if we say, are we comparing variables? Yes. Okay. So then we're on the path of, we're looking at the relationship between burnout and quality of life, for example. We want to say, how many times did they measure that thing? So if they measured that thing many times, we're talking about a longitudinal study. What longitudinal means is we think of long, like we look over a long period of time. So some of the most epic research studies that have ever been done are longitudinal. For example, the Harvard Men's study, they followed people for 75 to 80 years. And so they measured their outcomes across their whole life. I think with that study, they measured once a year, but you'll see different things like the Werner Resilience Study. She followed children for 40 years to see what happened across their lifespan. You don't have to go quite that long. You could also look at, like, we're giving a cancer medication and we want to look at relapse rates 5 years from now. So you can look at like shorter periods of time, but the idea is you're continuing to measure over a longer period of time. It's not just a one and done. So if we measure many times, great, we have a longitudinal study. If we do not measure many times, we're going to say, okay, we're measuring once, maybe twice, 3 times maybe, but like there's a very limited measurement. We're not trying to look at something over years. You might have something where they measure as the thing happened and then 6 months later to see. That I wouldn't consider a longitudinal study, but if they've got multiple measurements across time points and the purpose of the study is to look at the overall trajectory, then yes, that's longitudinal. So, okay, we're measuring once or a very few number of times. Do we know the direction of the relationship? So this is what determines whether it's cross-sectional if yes and correlational if no. So when we say directional relationship, we mean A happens, then B happens. So a cross-sectional study might be someone fails an exam and then we're assessing their rate of depression. Or more likely, someone does great on an exam and we're assessing their rate of happiness. And so we know that what happens on the exam is leading to the outcome, happiness. So we're measuring the variables in a specific order and we know the direction of the way that they're going. So this is not the same as experimental, where we can say it caused the thing, but we have a general confidence that we know how one variable is influencing the other. Correlational designs are notorious because we do not know the direction of the relationship. So when you're reading about it, it'll say cross-sectional design and or descriptive cross-sectional and descriptive correlational both measure relationships between variables. And they do. What correlational does is it measures the relationship when you don't know the direction. So you might have high self-esteem and exercise. And we might find that those have a positive relationship. So when one goes up, the other goes up. When one goes down, the other goes down. But we don't necessarily know. This is where we get the chicken and egg problem. So does someone exercise more and that gives them higher self-esteem? Or do they have higher self-esteem so they're willing to go to the gym and they exercise more? We don't know which one is causing the other, but we know that they're associated. And so the hallmark phrase is correlation does not equal causation. And we want to be clear about that because here we can see correlational designs are over here, they're descriptive. And then causation we get from all of these studies over here. So these are experimental. So you might have somebody say, well, exercise and self-esteem are associated with each other. And you'll hear the word associated primarily with correlational research, because we can't say exactly how they relate, but we know they're connected. Well, somebody will say going to the gym causes higher self-esteem. And as researchers, we say, no. Just because those variables are associated does not mean one causes the other. Maybe they're both caused by something else that's antecedent or happens beforehand that affects both of them. So it's important to know that we see people when they're trying, we talk about misinformation and things, one part of what misinformation is they'll take a cross-sectional study and make claims about it that are reflective of a randomized controlled trial. Or they might take a quasi-experimental design and associate it with a longitudinal outcome. So that is why it is important to be able to follow the tree here, because if we're going to use credible evidence in healthcare, we need to know where each path should go. And if somebody is trying to associate an experimental design with a descriptive outcome or vice versa, we say, no, correlation does not mean causation. Quasi-experimental does not mean longitudinal. Just because a thing happened here doesn't mean the same, the outcomes are going to be the same in 40 years. So that is an overview of quantitative designs. And now I'm going to go through the examples of each one.